Mother Nature can be unforgiving. She cares not who you are, so the weak and the strong are each just as susceptible to her whims. Keep your raincoat handy, because you're gonna need it as we get ready for the PCA Sim Racing Series 14 Sport Class. And you'll see it all live here on RaceSpotTV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Ewan O'Leary. Behind the scenes is our director, Hugo Luis. We're thrilled to have Princess Cruises as the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 17 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. Well, the racing in the rain has been interesting so far, Ewan, but we're starting to get well into the season.
Yeah, we certainly are. Last week in the Pro class, I've got to say, it was one of the best races I've witnessed in this series. Thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, MotorLand Aragon is a difficult circuit anyway. And just to see it here tonight in the rain, we don't know when indeed it's going to fall or indeed how strongly, but we know that it is going to mix up the racing, as if we need any more excitement this season.
Yeah, and it's been tight here and a bit topsy-turvy in this championship that we've had here in the sport class as well. So things have certainly been kind of shaken up. Will Wolf, who at first looked almost unbeatable, has now dropped to third after two poor races from his side. In fact, last time out, only 60 points as he wound up one of the last on the field. And that unfortunately means his drop rounds have pretty much been eaten up. He has got to bounce back. Jeppesen, in the meantime, a worst finish of third. Hence why he is topping the sheets right now. Casey McDonald slotting in a second. Lee Binkley, obviously, having a pretty good season up there in the top five, along with Andrew Long. They're not too far ahead of Jeremy Main. A call back, a little bit of a drop down, about 40 points behind them. And then it's a pretty big drop down to 8th, 9th, and 10th, where they're kind of squabbling for that position between Hammond, Costas, and Lervold. Looks like we are in the midst of qualifying at this stage, and as we were mentioning, Jeppesen and Wolf being kind of our two protagonists, they are P1, P2 as it sits right now.
Yeah, it very much reflects the season well, doesn't it, with Wolf and Jeppesen 1 and 2. Although worth saying that Will Wolf is a long way in front of Jeppesen, over half a second as it stands, but that could all change when we get to the wet weather a little bit later. Not forgetting that in the Pro class this time last week it was weather affected in qualifying, and that meant that the race looked very different, because that was a starting sort of drying phase, which was interesting. But we'll see what kind of conditions we get here tonight. But as much as you say, Wolf has very much been the headline maker from this championship season. It's worth noting that Joshua Jeppesen still hasn't finished off of the podium. Having said that, he's only got a 50-point championship lead, which he's been a little bit hard done by, really, I think, if you were so strong at the front and on the podium 4 times out of 4 to only have 50 points. Sounds like a lot, but in this series, that's only the gap between first and third.
And honestly, Casey McDonald's been kind of in a similar situation. A third, a second, and a second, but he missed the race in Watkins Glen. So he has no safety net saving him. He's going to have a lot harder time if he has any poor results, but it looks like the consistency is there when he's able to show up. We've got, this isn't William Wolf, this is actually Mike Sachs on our screen, and his latest lap was a 40.7. That was his last lap he was able to qualify with, so he'll do no better than 15th.
Yep. That's quite a long way down, unfortunately, for Sachs. Only Bruce Robinson, the only other driver out there on the circuit at the moment, as the seconds tick on by. 24 drivers in the field, and a spread of field of 5.5 seconds. Now, there is a limit on the amount of laps here, so I would suggest that the likes of Bruce Robinson and Ron Evans as well, who's the only other driver behind Robinson, have probably not got their absolute maximum out of this session because of the limited amount of time. But that just shows you again just what a difficult circuit this one really is. 13 corners and the layout that we're using here tonight, and a very long back straight towards a very flowing final corner that held so much of the action in last week's Pro race. Does feel like a more raceable corner in the wet though than it is here in the dry, but we'll see. Looks like we're going to get a bit of both here tonight.
Absolutely. And for those curious, the forecast is saying we've got maybe about 40 minutes before that rain arrives. Otherwise, it's going to start dry for today's event. William Wolf, as we mentioned, on the pole and by a pretty decent margin over Jeppesen, about half a second. Casey McDonald manages to put it in third, while Jeremy Main will start next to him in fourth. It's Nick Francis in P5, with Jim Walsh starting in the sixth position. From there, it is Brian Stern in at seventh. Lee Binkley will start in P8. Christopher Costas, he'll start ninth position. Top 10 going to be rounded out by Randy Lervold. Kevin Hammond will start in 11th, with Daniel Corbett then in the 12th position. From there, 13th is going to go to Andrew Elsom. John Kalbach will be in 14th. Mike Sachs, as we mentioned, 15th today with that last qualifying lap. Sheldon Zaharachuk will start in 16th. Then he's got Paul Cavanaugh to the inside of the next row, and Donald Manning starting in 18th. Alan Hale starts in P19, followed by Peter Yurtza in 20th. Kent Locklear, he'll be 21st. He's got Tim Thornton on the outside of his row. Bruce Robinson in P23, and then Ron Evans starting in 24th spot. And I believe that might be all of our starters for today. Indeed, it is. 24 cars going to be taking to the grid as we head off into the warm-up. We'll take a look at the qualifying pole lap here in just a moment to see how they managed it. I think it's the first time we've had a dry qualifying as well. I think the first two events we saw wet on the track.
We did hear pre this round, didn't we, that the classes, it would get steadily more difficult for the classes as we went along, and that seems to be with a dry qualifying to begin with. So this is Will Wolf, and I'm going to presume this is the pole lap as we run on board with him through this first sector, keeping it tight through 2 and 3. A little bit of opposite lock actually through turn 3, which is a bit unusual to see in a pole lap. Now the very difficult braking zone of turn 4 and 5, where you are turning and braking most of the way round, trying to grab that apex, although it constantly seems like it's just running away from you. And then in towards turn 7, which is a slightly easier mirror of the previous left-hander you've just been through. That's slightly less sharp too. Then downhill, pretty much steepest corners on this circuit really, through the S-bend of turns 8, 9 and follows into 10. Not using quite as much of the curve here as you could do, Will Wolf, but that's no bad thing because it's very easy to pick up an off-track through there. Through turn 11, or the end of turn 10 rather, not quite flat out through there, and it certainly won't be in the rain either. That's one of the more difficult corners in the rain, and it's one of the more important too, because look at this big old straight on the background. Through turn 12, past the odd chicane on the left-hand side that normally breaks this back straight into half. Instead, we run all the way down past the other layouts. There's another one on the left-hand side, and another chicane. And they keep on coming. Then in towards the final hairpin itself, really fast. It's a motorcycle corner, really, but it puts the right-hand side tyres through their paces in these Porsche Cup cars, looking to clip that curve on the left-hand side, which Will Wolf does nicely, and he runs up towards the line. Not the cleanest pole lap you've ever seen, but you can't argue with half a second and more quicker than the rest of the field.
Agreed. He's put himself well clear. Now he's got to back it up in the race. And admittedly, he tends to have the better pace in the race, but these last two rounds have been a bit mistake-riddled, and he's kind of been the victim of some unfortunate luck in some cases. Been a mix of a few things that I think have set him on the back foot, but he's got to try and rebound. He's doing everything right in the lead-up to the race. We'll see, Ewan, if he follows it up once we get the green flag.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think this race is so crucial in so many ways, because this is just 2 rounds now until the end of the season after this, and it's going to have rain, obviously, which is always odd to throw into the mix, and the last 2 circuits are not exactly reliable points days for anybody. Could be very, very tricky at Zolder, for example. So yeah, this is such a crucial day in so many ways, and I think we're going to really be able to separate a top whatever after today as far as the championship is concerned. If I'm Will Wolf, you've got to be looking to reduce that margin at the front. 80 points is quite significant, really, although Wolf could win the championship with 3 wins no matter what everybody else does. Having said that, he doesn't have a safety net to fall back on like Jeppesen does, neither does Casey McDonald, as you mentioned at the start, neither does Andrew Long, if we want to count him in as an outsider. 200 points back. Jeremy Main 220 back. These are the guys who have really got to have good days to vault themselves into contention. If I were to guess, it's going to be Jepson, Wolf and maybe McDonald in contention only at the end of what's set to be a very difficult day.
Yeah, you make a good point that only half of the top 6 in points have attended every round so far. So there's a lot of drivers that kind of have put themselves in this tough position, whether that be through real life obligations or other reasoning that they could not show. I'm keeping an eye on the radar. I can report that looks like we're about, actually 15 minutes as we have advanced time into the race session. So we are now 15 minutes away from a band of what looks like relatively light rain. And then it is going to stop after what seems to be roughly a half an hour. But some of that is not 100% on when exactly it will start. We'll see once we get there as they line up on the back straight, at least in dry conditions for now.
Yeah, so the key with light rain, especially when it's going to last quite a long time, but the initial point is going to be not to get freaked out by the fact that the rain is falling and jump in for the wet tyres immediately. Perhaps erroneously reported last week that you could go quite deep on dry tyres into a rain period, but that turned out to be completely false in the Pro class last week because it came down really quite hard. If it comes down quite light, you can get away with it quite a lot. Don't be distracted or put off by the spray or the rain falling down from the sky. Keep the dry tyres on for as long as you can possibly take them, then put the wets on. Try and line that up with a fuel stop. That would be the absolutely 100% ideal position, but you've got to be wary and ready for the fact that it may just not get wet enough for wet tyres. It is possible in iRacing, especially that the rain is just sort of lightish and the warm dry tyres are a better option.
Well, we might have a few Boy Scouts in the grid here because I am shocked to see we have 4 cars starting on wets, including third place starter Casey McDonald. From there, it's Zaharchuk, Hales, and Yurtsa. They're going to be starting on the wet tires. I don't think that's the right call. We're probably going to find out almost immediately if that's the right call or not, because those wet tires are going to get torn up with this completely dry track. In the meantime, they are already heading up towards the start-finish line, being controlled by William Wolf, and he gets the green flag. We are underway for the latest race in the Porsche Club of America. And Jepson gets a very good jump coming around the outside down into turn 1, 3 wide in behind them for third place. And in fact, behind them, a little bit of contact. Somebody gets sent to cross the track.
That's Lee Binkley who got turned there. He's 4th in the championship, one of those outsiders who I said at the start needed to have a very good day. He has, though, not had a good start. Ken Locklear and Peter Yerkser have also had trouble on the start. Yerkser, one of those 4 drivers to have started on the wet tyres. Casey McDonald, one of those. He's already lost a place to Jeremy Main.
And you saw some smoke on the screen. William Wolf had a half spin coming through turn 5. He's going to lose second place to Jeremy Main now, and we got more contact in behind him. Looks like Jim Walsh and Casey McDonald, I think, maybe turned around. In fact, a third car there involved.
It's Christopher Costis, not Jim Walsh, who's still up front in 4th place. There's Binkley. Oh, McDonald's got a meatball as well. I mean, he was going to be coming in fairly shortly anyway to change those tyres because that is not the right call, as you can see here, but he's going to be in even sooner now because he's got a meatball. So has Paul Kavanagh, who's currently running inside the top 10, so I'm not entirely sure how he's picked that up.
Very strange start to this race. Checking out Hammond with Lervol just in front of him. Corbett also getting a nice little tow. We're starting to see the effects of this long straightaway and the huge draft that it offers up as Kevin's going to get a nice run looking around the outside. Can he finish the job? Coming into the final corner, yes, much deeper on the brakes. No, he's too deep on the brakes, and he is not going to make the turn.
Well, it's the good thing about that corner, actually, is that there's tarmac runoff on the outside of turn 13 there, so you can get away with it just a little bit. And he gets back on right alongside Daniel Corbett down in towards turn 1. He will struggle on the outside there, though, even though it's quite a short corner, as it were. He's not going to be able to go around the outside there. So Hammond down to 8th. Andrew Elsom just in behind him in 9th place as well. Already these guys 7.5 seconds off the lead of Josh Jepson, who has not worried about any of the commotion behind him and just run away at the front.
Josh obviously was is a little bit wide there from Andrew Elsom. Comes to a halt just before the gravel and gets it going once again, but is losing multiple positions But Jeppesen finally got his first win of the season last time out at Laguna Seca. It had been a long time coming. William Wolf trying to recover here. He's already on the back of Jeremy May.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd imagine as well he'll make light work of Main, and he needs to, because Jeppesen is his real rival in this championship. It would be a huge step forward tonight for Jeppesen if he were to be able to take the race win. It would have stretched his margin over Wolf to 110, and that is very defendable over the course of the last 2 races. In fact, he could win it in 2 weeks' time with a round to spare if this result holds. But of course, there's a lot of if, buts and maybes in the next 57 minutes, including whether Wolf can get past Main here and how quickly he can do it. Not here, though.
He's taking a little bit of a look. He sends it in quite deep coming into the final turn, but you can square this one off, which is exactly what he does up and across the hill to complete lap 2. But he has continued to lose time, still about 2.5 seconds from Josh Jeppesen. He's going to have to make this move pretty soon, or else he could lose quite a bit to that 73.
Yeah, exactly. That's why there's some urgency here. You know, he may look at the time remaining on the clock and think, well, he's got nearly an hour left, but actually it's the gap out front which he's got to be worried about. To be fair to Jeremy Main, he is not letting that gap go out very quickly, and in fact last time round he closed in by 6/10 of a second. So if this is going to be a trend that continues and Main continues to pull in Jeppesen, then Wolf doesn't need to do anything. And at the moment he is struggling to get close enough to make that move.
Yeah, a bit surprising for sure. As we take a look at the very opening incident, it almost looked like that car in the middle may have gotten clipped a little bit and sent it into our driver that we're focused on here. And there was a secondary one as well, it looks like immediately after.
Yeah, so that was Yerxa and Kent Locklear it was in 088, who got tied up second time round there through turn 2. And then a little bit further on, Will Wolf obviously had his half spin, which we saw the smoke from at the time, and that's put him in this rather unenviable position now of being in 3rd place, just in behind Jeremy Main. As far as those on wet tyres are going, by the way, Casey McDonald has kept those on even while repairing his meatball. Peter Yerxa is persevering, but he's already half a minute off the lead, and Zaharachuk and Hales are still going as well. They've actually gained places off the start, would you believe it? But last time around, Zaharachuk was nearly 7 seconds slower than Joshua Jeppesen.
Yeah, I'm kind of impressed that they've managed as many positions as they have, but some of that has been helped by the incidents that we saw, including this one that caused a lot of those meatball flags where drivers had to come in. Costas and a few just taking a little bit too big of a hit, unfortunately, coming through turn 7. Also, I can report we've been getting some black flags in. Apparently didn't have his blinker on. Bruce Robinson, improper lane change, has been given a black flag. And same thing with Paul Cavanaugh as well.
Okay, so that's what the black flags have been about. Cavanagh's had to pit as well, don't forget. So now he's coming in to serve his penalty just now. And Bruce Robinson still hasn't quite cleared his. So still a couple of trips down pit lane to come as Christopher Costas begins his run back through the field. That was a spin we just got a replay of most recently there as he spun with McDonald. Main has made a mistake meantime at the S's, and he drops to 3rd.
So there's the spot for William Wolf. Now, was he being held up at all, or is he able to actually catch up to Jeppesen? The gap right now is roughly 2 seconds between them. We'll keep an eye on that to see if he starts to pick it up now that he's truly in clear air. Yeah, Costas, I feel like not doing too badly, all the way back up to 16th already as he just overtook Kent Locklear. And I think Alan Hales as well, yes, who is one of our drivers on wet tires. So that was an easy one. Next is Zaharachuk, the other driver up on wet tires. In fact, the highest up on those grooved pieces of rubber is Kevin Hammond. A little bit up the field is in the midst of Corbett up in 6th and Lervold in 8th behind him.
Yeah. And then John Kobeck is the next one you can see. So this could be all counted as one train, really, from Nick Francis, who's in 5th place at the moment. Not a driver we've seen too much of this season. In fact, only appeared for round 3, first of all, but was on the podium 2 weeks ago at Laguna Seca. So certainly making some strides. Currently running inside the top 5 early on here, but the real race is going to come later. That rain falling, if the pre-race predictions are to be believed, within the next 10 minutes, but we'll see about that.
And that blue and white car that you saw kind of sliding off at turn 1, that was Randy Lervold. He gets it going, but he's down to 9th position, a little bit off of this group now. Mike Sachs, in the meantime, has actually caught up to him. He's trying to see if he can demote him one more as he goes a little wide down into turn 7, trying to open up the corner. Doesn't quite get him the exit he needs at this stage.
Not quite. As they come down the hill, these two, into this S section. They don't use as much of the curves as the pro guys were doing last week, I must say. You can really roll over them there, apart from obviously the actual sausage curve on the inside of turn 8 there. They're pretty flat curves otherwise. As I mentioned before, a lot of motorcycle racing happens here, so can't have too big of a curves. As here we go, Francis under pressure from Daniel Corbett. He was quite a way ahead of these guys before this lap, but he's been caught and passed on this lap by Corbett.
It's a nice job by him. Also, I got word that Christopher Costas has been given a black flag for the incident he was involved in on lap 1 as well. So he's been sent in. 3 penalties already in the early stages of this race. In the meantime, Nick Francis has a good run on Hammond coming down into turn 1. Kevin is going to try and defend down to the inside. Could see an over-under here, but no, he's not able to get down to the apex.
No, Kevin Hammond follows Corbett through past Nick Francis. So a bad lap, unfortunately, for 55. He drops 2 places in one go in this midfield battle, which is a bit of a shame. All these guys, by the way, on dry tyres have been since the very start of this race. Only Zaharchuk is still trying. Oh, sorry, Hales is as well. Oh, it's trouble out of turn 6 anyway.
And that started just a little bit off screen. We could see the smoke. There's more trouble than on returning to the track. Unfortunately, Francis just having a bit of a bummer of a lap around here. Started with Corbett and just kind of trickled back to Francis in the end, as it looks like Kevin also stricken at the side of the track, not continuing, and more trouble here. My goodness.
What is going on today? This is highly unusual for the PCA Sport class, I've got to say. And Hammond almost looked like he was waiting for somebody there. So Stern has gone past him. Tim Thornton has gone through. Probably can't believe his luck at the moment. Thornton's up 10. And not many of them from actual overtakes. Hammond is trying to let Elson back past, I think, but Elson's not almost accepting the place. This is highly weird between these two. Hammond finally says, all right, I'll get on with it then. But, I mean, I've never, I don't think, ever seen anybody stop on the racetrack trying to redress a position quite like that before. About 2 corners after it had happened. Very, very weird. And I say highly unusual.
Yeah, that seemed a bit extreme for sure. We're back to Corbett and Kalbick. This is for 5th position. John holding the advantage up in front. Both of them going very far down into turn 1, right up to the edge of the track. You can tell they are pushing it. And we asked whether or not William Wolf could catch up to Josh. That is an affirmative. Look at that. He's run him down to 0.3 of a second and has repeatedly outpaced him on multiple laps now at this stage. And crucially, to your point earlier, I still see Jeremy Main not far back in the background there.
Yeah, he's lurking, you would say. Jepson and Wolf can't afford to fight themselves too hard. If I was Wolf, I would be tempted to wait till the rain, really. But he will feel that he's got the dry weather advantage. That was proven in qualifying. I think has been proven here again. He will want to make that advantage count right now, and he's going to have a great chance at the end of this straight.
And if you've been noticing a little bit of darkness on certain parts of the lap, they're what's showing it roughly 2 minutes away from potential precipitation starting to come down. But again, it's not looking like very heavy rain like we had seen in the first 2 races. Look to the inside. William Wolf's got the run. He's fully alongside Josh Jepson. He started it on the pole, and he's got himself back to that position as long as he makes this final corner, and he does this time.
Yeah, very nicely done. And as I say, Wolf couldn't pass up an opportunity like that, and you would say he probably has to work quite hard to get through anyway. Drive home this advantage while he's got it, because who's to say that Jepson's not going to be a little bit more handy in the rain when it starts to arrive? That's something that's got to be in the back of Wolf's mind. As they come into turn 1 though, 1/5 distance complete, and Wolf is back in the lead, good as new, 12 minutes after he lost it.
Also got a penalty for Kent Locklear, another lap 1 incident. This was with the 54 car, so that's Peter Yurtsa. There were so many that happened, I've kind of lost track of which was which. In the meantime, we're checking in on Tim Thornton. Kevin Hammond manages to get by, and it looks like Tim actually lets also Elsom go past in that sort of pink colored machine who's taking a look down at the inside of turn 1 and thankfully backs out of it. That was a little tight.
Yeah. It's easy to get overexcited, isn't it, in a race like this? You see so much carnage around you, so much going on, that you just lose your head a bit, lose your mind a bit, and that does seem to have been happening in the last few moments. Race control only 12 minutes later, just getting through some of the lap 1 incidents now, just shows you how many things they've had to go through and look at, because generally in the PCA the stewards' decisions do not take very long, so they will be going through with the same efficiency as before. There's just more of them to look at, and that will be, I'm sure they'll get a talking to about that, these drivers, at the end of the race.
Yeah, without a doubt. They have high expectations in the PCA on clean racing. We're checking in with Mike Sachs here in 8th spot, who's catching up to Randy Lervold, it looks like, in that 614 just in front of him. He's going to kind of dive to the inside, see if maybe he could defend in case Randy gets a nice little run, or excuse me, if Mike gets a run. But looking to the outside, coming down to the braking, don't think this is quite going to work for the 599. Didn't have just enough pace. Chris Costas now, the latest to raise the ire of the stewards.
Yeah, and that will be, if I was to imagine, for his part. Well, he's already got a black flag tonight, hasn't he? So maybe he's already got his penalty for the one with McDonald, and that's for one with something else. But not a good night for Costas so far. He's already down in 21st, over a minute off the lead, and he's pitted for dry tyres. He's been through the pit lane once already as well. It's been a bit of a nightmare, unfortunately, and he's going to be even further down after this most recent incident. This was all very strange. This was Elsom getting spun around. This is very shortly after he was involved with Nick Francis out of turn 5, so he was just getting himself back up to speed and then was hit again.
Going from bad to worse for sure. I double-checked. Christopher Costas' first penalty was with contact with the 02. That's Lee Binkley. This one's with the 764. That's Casey McDonald. And both of them I'm showing on lap 1. And yeah, there you can see Nick Francis just having a day. Oh, and having a very poor rejoin. That also can sometimes merit a penalty.
Yeah, I'd imagine he'll get one for that. That's what Elson was so almost looked shell-shocked when he was in that other incident we were just watching a replay of there a moment ago. That's why, because that one we just saw there preceded the other one with the pink car. So Elsom has really been bashed from pillar to post on that lap, unfortunately, and as a result, he's now running all the way down. Where is he now? It's 13th place he is. He will have gained some places from other people's troubles after that, as Randy Lervold goes down inside of Mike Sachs. There's been a good racing, I think, out the final corner between these two. Sachs gets a good run out the final turn and can have another look towards turn 1. Yeah,
Mike had actually pulled past him by the time they got to the entry of the corner, but maybe took it a little too far in. So that gives it right back to the 614. It's certainly been flummoxing the 599 on how to get past. You can see those clouds up above, and we still haven't gotten them yet. For some reason, the clouds have now formed almost a little bit of a notch right around the track as it approaches. So it has delayed what we thought was going to be some precipitation, much to the dismay of Zaharachuk, Hales, and McDonald, who are still on those wet tires.
I mean, if you make your bed, you should really lie in it, but I suppose that is the wrong call. It is absolutely bone dry. And as I mentioned earlier on, in light rain conditions, especially as Donald Manning, I hope, isn't going on to wets here, but he might be. You've just got to soldier on for as long as possible when there is rain like this, because it is you can deal with it in our racing. You can deal with it quite well. That most games, to be honest, don't have the state of rain where it's sort of wet, but you can survive on the dry tyres. But our racing does. You can survive even with quite a lot of spray. You can survive in light rain. And so, I'm not saying they're going to get through this whole race without using wets, but they might well get further into the rain than you expect. And that's even more case, I think, for starting on the dry tyres.
Oh, is he going to try and get it done this time? Maybe using the same trick back on Randy Lervold. He does cut back underneath. Lervold goes a little bit wide on corner exit, and Mike manages to get the run. He's got a nose inside, and it is a drag race down into turn 1. Mike holds the advantage, but he is not fully alongside. He breaks a little bit deeper. They're going to make contact, and Lervold is going to be sent to the outside.
How many incidents is that now for race control to have a look at? That is just unbelievable. Mervold in towards turn one this time. Can't really tell who was at fault, if I'm honest with you, from that from the live shot. Oh, I just got a flash of rain. I'm pretty sure I just saw some raindrops on the screen. I think it is arriving a few minutes behind schedule.
Yep, we're starting to see it show up here. A couple drivers have changed, but I'm with you. I think this is too early, and they may have had to have waited just a little bit longer. And for the drivers that have been on those tires, no doubt they are not going to be very effective, considering how much they have chewed them up in almost 20 minutes of dry running.
Yeah, exactly. You just burn through them, and that process will obviously be a lot quicker than it will be for dry tyres around here. This is pretty a high tyre wear venue anyway, even though the temperatures will be a bit of a relief. It is still low 30s Celsius, high 80s Fahrenheit. That will start to dip now, but you chew through those wet tyres very, very quickly indeed. Now the bravery part of this race comes in. You've got to not worry about the rain that's falling on your screen. But Jeppesen has blinked immediately. I still think this will be too early.
Yeah, in fact, I don't think the entire track is even receiving rain at this point, although that looks like it should be the case pretty soon, as I can see the clouds going over the track. In the meantime, Elsom in a battle with Brian Stern. Stern has been on something of a recovery of his own as he got caught up in that lap 1 incident, but he's managed to get back into 11th at this stage. Elsom unable to make the move, and Stern is also going to make the call into pit lane.
Yep, so Brian Stern into the lane, and I just think this is too early. Watch for this pit stop time here for Jeppesen. He's definitely going on to the wets. We can see that clearly now. But watch for some of the lap times from some of the others at the moment. The best wet tyre lap time last time round was from Casey McDonald, who did a 45.1. That was still 5.5 seconds slower than William Wolff. Now his best lap is a few seconds slower anyway. But even so, that would still be even if that's corrected, you'd say it's a second or two in favour of Wolff. And I think it will be for a few laps yet.
Yeah, you think about that. We often talk about it as driver feel. The driver gets to make the call when it is appropriate to try to change over to those wets. But the numbers do not lie. If it is slower on those wet tires, you got to try and stick it out on the dries as best you can, because the laps are going to be quicker. In the meantime, it looks like we got a nice little fight with the 719 coming down into that last corner once again. Christopher Costas on Manning. Manning goes a little bit wide. Costas ducks underneath him. Is he going to be pitting in? It looks like no, he is going to stay out. He's still on the dry tires, mind you, even though he has been in pit lane.
Yeah, and that is the sensible thing. If you've been in pit lane, you've got to stay on the dries for me, as Jeremy Main is now coming in to make that change. Now John Cowbeck as well. Last time round though from William Wolff, he was only a second slower than his best lap time of the race so far. We'll keep an eye on the other wet times, but I can't imagine they'll be getting anywhere near a 1:40.5, which is what the race leader did last time round.
Yeah, Jeppesen needs to give us a clear lap time, since this is his out lap. It won't really quite translate yet. We won't have the accurate reading. We'll keep our eyes peeled as Brian Stern here, sitting in 16th spot, is working on Nick Francis. Nick needs, I think, a little bit of good luck coming his way after what seemed to be something of a miserable lap for him. Peter Yurt's directly ahead of both of them. They're all going to get a tow coming down that back stretch, but who is going to come out ahead as huge amounts of speed get raised, and just the lightest of rain is going to change the grip. So who can read it as they get on the binders? And it does look like Francis has done so best.
Yeah, has, and holds the inside line tight through the final corner as well. See, it's not too bad for these wet tyre runners at the moment, but they will be getting very, very overheated very quickly, these guys, so got to be very careful. Yerxa last time round, as they go over the line, did a 47.4, but still very slow compared to those around him. Elsom comes out the pit lane here, and that is Brian Stern in there as well. They're all in here, but they're all on the wrong tyres as it stands, as Nick Francis gets a black flag for that rejoin. Ironically, he's only just in front of Andrew Elsom again.
Yep, so we called that one right, unfortunately, for Francis. William Wolf is slowing the pace a little bit. Now, some of that may be due to him coming up to traffic. In fact, yeah, that's him that we can see in this group right now as he's trying to navigate these cars on different tires, on the dry tires currently, as the rain just sputters down.
He's just got so much more grip, though. They're skating all over the place around him, and I know he's a quicker driver, and he's proved that he's probably the quickest driver this season, but he is just objectively on the right tyres as things stand. You've got to soldier on. There's not even any spray yet. Now we're starting to see, as I say that, the faintest bits of it, but now is the moment where you start to consider it, not before there's even spray being kicked up. This is a bit of an early call, I'm afraid, made by everybody else, but obviously, if you've not experienced very much rain, not done very many races with a dry to wet transition, it's difficult to read that. And of course, it's not the same for every type of rainfall. This is light enough for this to be a factor. If it came down heavy like it did in the Pro Class last week, then he wouldn't be staying out this long.
Looks like we got a nice little fight coming into that last turn. That's going to be a repeated theme all night long. Yurtsa versus Stern. Stern comes out ahead as Peter actually goes a little wide. Elsom is able to cut underneath him and move up to that 14th spot. Pass isn't completely done, though, and he has to try and finish it up down into turn one. While ahead of them, William Wolf carries on, still owing us a pit stop, but still lapping faster. Now, this time actually was about even. Granted, I would put that more down to the traffic he had to navigate.
Yes, I would say so as well. Through the first sector, he was really held up, but that's going to be the case for him now. You know, you've got to factor that into the equation now, actually, because there is a lot of traffic around on the racetrack. Casey McDonald and Randy Lervold are battling just in front of him now. He'll probably catch up to John Cowbeck at the end of this lap or the beginning of the next. So this is something he's got to factor into the strategy now, and not just the weather conditions. That's what makes it so difficult. But we are starting to reach that tipping point now, I would say. Some of those wet tyre runners are starting to get close, because if they're going faster than Wolf, then it's definitely quicker to be on wets, because Wolf is faster than them.
Exactly. So those who are smart will be trying to kind of keep track of what the lap times look like and know what is that cutoff that they need to make that call. And we back down the backstretch once again. Hales versus Zaharachuk. Now that Sheldon is on the correct tires, or at least closer to the correct tires, we get a little bit of a fight. And coming down the inside, my goodness, who was that? That was Kent Locklear, a lap down, trying to make a recovery. These two will keep battling amongst each other, but it is Zaharachuk who comes out ahead.
You don't see that very often, do you? An unlapping manoeuvre, 3 wide down the back straight, and there's going to be a response here from Sheldon Zaharachuk, who's been waiting for this moment for a long time, and is now coming down the inside and through again into 7th position. But these guys have got Wolf in the rearview mirror, because, well, it did until he came into pit lane. Finally, the leader blinks, and only Daniel Corbett is left, along Christopher Costas as well, still on the dry tyres. He's playing it safe, but he's gone longer than everybody else, and so Wolf has effectively won out of this cycle.
And also, before we get the last drivers in, we want to give a quick mention to Princess Cruises, because they are the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 17 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. So we wait for Corbett, who actually, he's just come in. So there's our last driver. Granted, we do still are owed a pit stop by Zaharachuk and Hales, who have not stopped yet, and I think Peter Yurtsa as well still needs a pit stop. The main reason is it's not just because of tires. They do not have enough fuel to finish the race.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fascinating thing about this format as well. The fact that it's got rain for the first time in season 14 is the idea of that fuel strategy having to be factored into this tyre change as well. We saw it last week with the club and pro classes, and now we're seeing it here in the sport class as well. Thankfully, it is falling almost directly in the middle of the race for Will Wolf here this time around, and he now leads by nearly 7 seconds. So times will continue to slow down here, but the rain will continue to make this circuit more and more difficult. So it's going to be difficult to get a gauge on conditions now, though we're only going to really be able to compare the drivers against one another. Hopefully there'll be lots of similar battles like last week, because it was these sort of mixed conditions that provided the best racing in the Pro Class race anyway.
Certainly the laps that require the drivers to really try and read what the surface was telling them. And for now, the tea leaves are saying it is wet tires, as all the drivers are about at the same pace that we were seeing when William Wolf pitted in. About 45, minute 45 per lap is what we were seeing. In the meantime, watching on board with Stern here, riding in 12th position. That's Elsom kind of trying to run away from him. Elsom has taken his pit stop, so has Stern, about 3 or 4 laps ago for each of them. And at least for Elsom, he is up 2, while Brian Stern has lost 5 since the start.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of drivers with stories like that, unfortunately. But on the flip side, obviously, lots of guys who've been moving forward. Mike Sachs is up 10, so is Sheldon Zaharchuk, who's somehow making this work, by the way, bizarrely. Alan Hales as well, up 12. You know, they are going to have to stop for fuel at some point, but the fact that they are even moving on those tyres is just unbelievable. And the fact that, you know, 6th and 7th, they've made it work. You know, I wouldn't have even predicted that they'd get into the top 10 at any stage tonight. So the fact that they are doing so well is fair play to them. They drove quarter of an hour on the wrong tyres there, if not more.
Exactly. And I mean, if they can keep them on, it should be a very short pit stop in comparison. I'm seeing most drivers between 32 and 40 seconds for the tire change. Granted, we are seeing that the rain should stop in about 15 minutes. It will take a little bit of time to dry, but as we've been saying, this hasn't been the heaviest of rain, so where it may have taken quite a few laps for the track to clear for both pro and club, for this one, I can't imagine it's going to take all that long before we'll see a pretty dry line.
No, you wouldn't have thought so. That period is going to be shrunk, so it's going to be a real decision to make there, because to be fair to Zaharchuk and Hales has shown that it's actually not that bad to soldier on, but you know, if you get a guy like Will Wolf on the dry tyres, you're going to be able to hold him back on those wet tyres on a dry circuit. That could be very, very tricky. So yeah, there's a big decision to be made in the next half an hour of this race, if indeed that situation arises where we've got a drying circuit, because say it will get dry before the finish if it stops now with half an hour to go.
Like I said, I think it's somewhere in the realm of about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that at this stage, before what it's predicting is the end of the rain. So it's going to be probably about 15 minutes of no precipitation for the track to try and dry up, but with 24 cars, that will scoop up that water off the surface relatively quickly. Meanwhile, look at all the weaving back and forth coming down to the braking as Callback is trying to keep... well, that's actually not for position. That's Kent Locklear coming up behind him, who, as we've seen, is extremely quick, but for some reason wound up a lap down.
Yeah, and that is going to be a real problem for the rest of this race. Traffic is going to be a big story. We saw it throughout the pit stop cycle for Wolf, but it's going to become a bit of a problem for everybody now, with the field still 24 cars strong. Everybody's still running, and a lot of them a lap down, and more of them to be put a lap down as well. 1 or 2 even multiple laps down. So it's going to be very, very busy. And just look at this midfield battle anyway. If you look at it, time it from, say, Mike Sachs all the way down to Corbett or so, you've got, what's that, about 10 drivers covered by less than 20 seconds. Adi Yerkser for 11. It's very, very busy around here. And when you add the lap cars in here as well, you've got cars everywhere, as you can see. And that's going to be a big story for the last half an hour.
And those who have noticed that the gap is much bigger now between P1 and P2, I can report that Jeppesen had an off-track last lap. So that's why you're seeing it nearly doubled than what it was the previous time around. Not a good sign for Josh. This is honestly what we needed to see from William Wolf, but we still have about half the race to go. So it's not over. I wouldn't count those chickens quite yet, but it's been a great response after what has been a bit of an underwhelming last two races.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said earlier, Wolf has to do well here today, I think, to let it not go the wrong way, really. He's 80 points behind coming into today, as I mentioned earlier, when the situation was different and Jefferson was first with Wolf in third. That gap with that gap was going to go out quite a lot. Even with Wolf in second place, Jefferson winning, the gap be 110, as I said earlier. So it's a race he has to maybe doesn't necessarily have to win, but he certainly has to beat Jefferson, I would say. But it's very difficult to get ahead in the championship of a driver who is yet to finish outside of the podium places. Indianapolis in third place is still Jefferson's worst finish, and he's more than 10 seconds ahead of anybody who can deny him of keeping that record at the moment.
Exactly. Even if he has a terrible race and wrecks out early, he'll essentially get third place points because that is his drop week right now. So he's in a much better position. We've been seeing some blinking from Elsom here, which worries me, because that is another thing that the stewards in this series can penalize you for. They will send you down in the pit lane if they feel like you are a problem for those around you. I wouldn't be shocked if that suddenly gets noticed by the stewards, and they wouldn't penalize it immediately necessarily. They will give you a warning. He's going to try and make a move on Lervold, coming down to the Sacacorchos chicane, and he gets that one nice and tidy, actually.
Yeah, that was quite nicely done from Elson through on Lervold, but you'd expect Elson to be making up some positions at the moment. He's up 3 now, but obviously he's been sent a little bit down the field with various incidents. Got hit as Nick Francis rejoined the circuit, and then was hit again at the very next corner when he was still a bit shell-shocked about what just happened to him. Good to see that he's back inside the top 10 now, and unfortunate for Randy Lervold, who's now back outside of the top 10 again. Brian Stern looking to regain some of these places behind as well, and this really cramped midfield, as I was saying earlier on, Stern is in here as well, and looking on Lervold, just holds the middle of the road and holds the position for now.
Doesn't quite make the move. Don't think he was close enough to try anything serious into there. We've already seen how easily you can overshoot, not just in the wet, but in the dry as well. A couple drivers doing that early in the race. He shows himself in the mirrors coming down into turn 1, but again, this doesn't look like anything feasible for that green and white 666 car. These three still fighting for that last of the top 10 positions with about 25 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah, not long to go at all here for these guys. Well, yeah, less than half the race, so see how quickly Stern can manage this. You'd expect him, as I say, to be able to get through, and last time around he was 1.8 seconds quicker, but that doesn't equal an overtake by any means. He'll have a good run here through turn 6, inside dive at 7, if it's there. No, it's not there. He's going to have the door closed on him, and Lervold will keep 11th again.
Still putting a lot of pressure on him. I think as long as he stays there, he could potentially manage to get something out of him, find an opening somewhere. As we are still waiting on Zaharachuk and Hales to pit in. I can report Peter Yerxa hasn't pitted, and looks like everybody else has at least made one visit to pit lane, although Nick Francis's last time, I believe, was due to a penalty. Same thing with Tim Thornton, so I'm not sure if either of them have actually had their stop. Meanwhile, we get a good view of what the spray looks like here, with Alan Hales showing us the fight with Zaharachuk. Both of these drivers started on these same tires, but amazingly they've made them last through the dry and are getting towards the end, where I am starting to really feel like they could just take the fuel and go. Yeah,
I would say so. I mean, it's still raining at the moment, so you get to a stage in this race where you know it's going to retain at least enough moisture to mean that these guys can take it home. Still not seeing a real load of water on the racetrack, though, which is a real problem. It's still very light rain, which means I do think there'll be a pretty dry circuit developing very quickly. So they've got to hope this rain lasts another 10 minutes or so, I would say. But I mean, the fact they've got this far again is just astonishing to me. They're in a slightly inflated position, admittedly, at the moment, because they haven't stopped for anything yet, for fuel or tyres. However, it's still remarkable that they've been able to make this work. I never thought they'd they'd be running in the top 10 at any stage, never mind this deep into the race.
I'm just as flabbergasted as you are. I can't really explain how they've managed to make them work this well. Brian Stern, in the meantime, is still working on Lervold. This is down into 7, both of them quite shallow into the corner, and that's not going to work out for Brian. This has allowed Andrew Elsom to kind of run away from the pair of them. He's now well up the road, despite him being involved in the battle a little bit earlier. In fact, I think he's getting close to working on Casey McDonald pretty soon here. This is where I think Brian Stern needs that good exit, Ewan. He needs that run coming out of 10 down the back stretch, but it looks like he's gone a little bit wide.
Oh, that's the worst corner possible for it to happen as well, as you come out of turn 10. Really denotes your run for the whole of this back straight here, although so you've got a bend in it, but all the way down towards turn 13. It's a very, very, very long run, so Brian Stern is going to be losing time all the way down here. Kevin Hamann in the background will be gaining, and he really is looking quick at the moment. Last time round a 51.6, quicker than the next two drivers in front of him, Lervold and Stern, who are battling away themselves, and so he may be looking in his mirrors more now, Stern, than up ahead of him.
Impressively, with all the craziness of the different strategies, we do still have 17 drivers on the lead lap, and none have DNF'd. So fantastic job by the entire field up to this point to deal with the madness. But before it gets too crazy again, I want to take a moment to take a mention for Princess Cruises, because they're the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 17 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. Kevin Hahn now rocking up to the back of this battle, but he gets a bad exit coming out of 7. Brian Stern with a decent one, just not long enough of a straightaway down to the Saccacorcio chicane.
It's a very, very long, very short dash towards turn 8. So he's got to get this corner right. This is the crucial bit. Turn 10. Inside curb is fine. Don't want to be on the outside too much though. And it's just that Lervold has really got that exit down, it looks like. You know, not particularly worrying about the entry of the corner, making that look too good, but he's got the exit absolutely dead straight, and that's all you need really. You're not going to be able to pass very easily into the S's or indeed through turn 10 itself. So just get straight and get going, and it's going to be very difficult to get past on the way towards turn 13, and Lervold is absolutely fast in the right places right now.
Let's not forget that this season it's been open setup, whereas in seasons past both the sport and challenge classes have had fixed setups, so the drivers have had to do a little bit more work here and maybe can get a little bit more creative in how to find speed in these cars. That was wide in the background by Hammond, unfortunately, so the 247 loses a little ground on this pair.
He's got to get, Lervold goes a bit wide and he gets up over the curb. He'll be under big pressure from Stern now, but Hamanna's got to get close. If he wants to get into the middle of this, he's got to get close to Stern and make him think more about what's going on behind him than what's going on in front, because if Stern actually passes Lervold, it could be difficult for Hamann to pass Lervold as well and then get to Stern and then pass him before the race is finished.
The other thing to keep in mind is we do have an incident limit. That time it is Lervold's turn to go wide. Brian is pouncing immediately, and that is what he's been waiting for. Finally in 11th spot. Now he's got to take off up the road as Kevin tries to see if he can also take advantage, but no dice. Lervold will defend and keep him back. Yeah, drivers, if they go off track enough times, they could be disqualified. 25 incidents and you are automatically out.
And Mike Sachs has just had another incident. I don't know whether it would have been incident points involved, but he certainly had a slowing down, because Alan Hales is now in front of him, and Sheldon Zaharachuk is also ahead as well. Here comes Casey McDonald past John Calbeck. That wasn't too difficult. McDonald now is going to be able to try and get past Sachs as well now. Don't forget, McDonald's has been on those tyres for almost as long as Hales and Zaharachuk have.
I was able to check, and I think it was an off at turn 7 for Sachs that cost him the positions here. But he should theoretically get one back, at least two back, from Hales and Zaharachuk, like you were saying, that still need to come in and take a pit stop and get fuel. but they could probably go for quite a while, as they shouldn't need as much fuel in these wet conditions, with it being slower lap times as Mike Sachs and Casey McDonald get very close down into turn 1.
Yeah, you'd imagine McDonald will make light work of these guys. He's got to finish 5th really in this race, McDonald, but I think that could be quite difficult for him to do. I'm not sure he'll have the fuel to get home, so he's just got to go as quickly as he can while he's out there, and that means by getting past Mike Sachs as quickly as possible, but that could be difficult as they come through turn 5. It's becoming increasingly difficult as the rain falls, although it might not be for too much longer. It becomes increasingly difficult to turn and brake at the same time, as we saw there, and everybody seems to be running wide through turn 5 now.
And something I think we've forgotten is that Casey also still needs to come in for fuel too. I'm showing him on lap 22 of this stint, and I had forgotten that he had to come in to take that spare car after the first lap, getting involved in some of all the chaos that was happening. So even this 8th place is not looking good for the 764, although he's looking pretty fast down that back straightaway. Mike Sachs might have to defend coming into the final turn. He holds the middle of the track, and that has been the desired line in the wet to keep off of the slicker rubbered in part. So McDonald's going to be forced to that maybe less desirable line. He does have a bit of a toe. He's going to brake a lot earlier. Is that going to... Nope, that's going to be Mike Sachs, who is just way too far into the turn, cutting back underneath. Casey McDonald called it right.
Yeah, he absolutely did. He timed that very well through the final corner. The exit far much more important. The second part of the corner, really, rather than the exit, is far much more important. And Calbeck's actually going to have a go at Mike Sachs as well as a result, but not quite close enough that time around. So McDonald up to 7th, and yeah, he may well have to pit again, probably does have to pit again with that fuel situation. So maybe Mike Sachs knows that, and he knows he's still in the cards for a top 5. He's got to put those 3 overtakes in the last few minutes behind him and focus again on defending from Calbeck and Elson, because that could be for a 5th place finish.
This has definitely been one of the best battles we've been seeing in the latter half of the race here. But again, some of these drivers still need to come in, so that the complexion of this fight is likely to change in the next few laps or so. Some of these drivers will start to disappear, and drivers like Sachs, Calbeck, and Elsom will start to inherit places over their rivals who have been kind of playing the long game, if you will, in this race, much to the unexpected surprise by myself and Ewan, figuring that they had made a complete wrong strategy call, but honestly just seemed to be cruising fine.
Oh, Jefferson's in. Now, is he going early on the dry tyre call? Is he making another pit stop for tyres here as Jefferson comes in? Surely he doesn't need any fuel, I wouldn't have thought. But let's wait and see here as Casey McDonald gets alongside Zaharchuk. He's making light work of these guys who are on the same age tyres as he is, in fairness, but is still coming through anyway on these guys, because he is a bit quicker, trying to rescue his season, really.
And I don't think this is the right call for Jefferson.
No.
Yes, he was far away from Wolf, but the only way this would make sense is if he had a huge gap behind, and he did not have that. He's already down to 4th. In fact, he's going to lose some spots to Hales, McDonald, Zaharchuk, as well, as we're watching that battle down the main straight. Elsom looks like he's going to make a spot on Calbeck. In fact, he's going to come out in this group, which is even worse. He's now going to be involved in all this battling.
Yeah, and right in the middle of it, while he's getting up to speed, and you can see he's not up to speed. Good job from Elsom and Calbeck to just adjust their lines there through turn 2 and make sure they don't hit him. But look at that. He's not quite fast enough. Now, and indeed the tyres aren't gripping enough at the moment, but the other way of looking at it, I do agree with you, but the other way of looking at it, and the argument I think that he would make, is that, well, I'm going to get points for 3rd place, whatever happens tonight, because that's my worst result so far.
Oh, he's in the wall.
I might as well try and win the race with a Hail Mary and still finish 3rd than stay in 2nd, but I don't think he made the right call there. I think he should have stayed in 2nd, and we're seeing the demise of that now.
Sorry for butting in there. We cut over to it as we come back to this fight for what is now 2nd place. Jim Walsh looking at a potential podium here, but Jeremy Main is fighting him for it, and that is a lapped car in behind, so that is not for position. This is about to get very interesting. Jim goes a little bit wide. Now Jeremy's got the advantage as they come down the main straight, but he's being forced to the inside as Jim defends. Both of them on the binders coming into that first corner, late down to the apex. They're going to make side-to-side contact, and Walsh is going to get brushed into third.
Yeah, he is. This is a big battle between these two, because it would be a big result, especially for Jim Walsh, you'd say, in this championship season, with only one appearance so far, and that was well outside the top 10. Jeremy Main as well, if he's going to be an outsider for this championship, it's going to need second position, so it could be a big battle as Hales and Zaharchuk finally come in at the very latest opportunity. They will not change tyres though.
Just saw Peter Yurtsa also pitted and took dries, but he's been slipping and sliding around himself on the track, so it's definitely not looking like it is dry enough for drivers to try and make a call to get some positions by being kind of contra to those around him. Like you said, you kind of need that gamble to maybe make up some big spots if you're lacking them, but that gamble just does not seem to be paying off. The man that's been consistent through all of this is William Wolf, who has just been plugging away, is now leading by almost 36 seconds as Haman and Lervold will once again swap positions. I think Kevin briefly ahead, but Randy denies him once more.
Yeah, Kevin Haman is making hard work of this, really, for a driver who I think who is quicker, really, than Randy Lervold at the moment. He's making quite hard work of this battle for ninth position. They come downhill through the S's. It is proving to be relatively difficult to overtake. That is the case in the dry here, but last week in the mixed conditions, it was very, very easy to battle side by side, and we saw some brilliant racing between the top four, especially in that race. Lervold showing that if you're just fast in the right places, you can stay in front quite nicely, as Lervold is doing here.
I could report that Josh Jepson is in a third time. It is looking like this one has unraveled, unfortunately, as it's much better run for Kevin Haman. And he's going to try and get by down the inside. We've seen drivers try this before, but they go in a little bit too deep, and Kevin does go wide, cutting back. Randy Lervold's going to get the position once again, and this is a very steady as she goes drive from the 614, who seems to be constantly under attack all race long.
Yeah. Weird how some of these drivers do get targeted, feels sometimes, as Lervold again holds on in towards turn number one very nicely as well. These two not quite in the danger and indeed in the possibility of getting lapped by Wolf one more time. It looks like, with quite a few seconds in front of them from Stern and quite a few behind to Corbett, that these two are actually going to be able to battle quite freely in the last 10 minutes, and that might play into the hands of Haman, although maybe not. He may well have wanted the traffic to come and disrupt things to help him get past.
Certainly could be a factor if he was there. He's got Kent Locklear, but we've seen he's pretty fast and he's already ahead of them. And I don't see any other lap traffic that looks like they're about to immediately pass. Coming down to the braking, and a bit of different lines between them initially, but back to the racing line. Kevin goes back to the traditional run through this downhill plunge. Now he tries to get on the throttle. You can still see a little bit of that spray. It is going to be just a bit dicey trying to put that power down, finding the grip, but he does so nicely. Now, can he actually make the corner? That's been his undoing before.
Yeah, exactly. He's been able to use that tarmac runner from the outside, but he won't want to this time round, as he's got the power to go through. He'll hope he's clear, actually. The straight's so long that if you get a good enough run, you can actually be clear by the apex here, and he could just turn in on the normal racing line, which he's currently holding on the outside there. But Lervold won't want to give this one up. Oh, he brakes very late on the inside. Has Lervold this time gone too deep? No, he's just done that perfectly, and he stays in front in ninth place.
Kevin has not found that Goldilocks braking zone quite yet. So unfortunately, first time was too long, this time was too short, and he remains in that 10th position. Our two wet shod drivers that started this race, I think, have both taken their pit stops. Yes, Hales is back out. He's running 13th, Zaharchuk in 15th. Now, Sheldon's only made up one spot, but Allen has actually made up at 7 right now, because Casey McDonald has just stopped as well.
Yeah, he needed a bit of fuel, but this is taking an age.
Oh, he's repeatedly backing up and pulling forward too. I'm not sure what's going on there.
I wonder whether he just couldn't get into his box properly, couldn't get lined. We've all been there. It says too far forward, too far back, too far sideways, or whatever. Yeah, anyway, he's out in 15th, and that is very bad news for him. He has no safety net, as he mentioned at the start, because he didn't go to Watkins Glen. So this is going to be a massive, massive points hit to him. Even with Jefferson all the way down there, he'll lose, I mean, nearly 150 points to him. And he'll lose a lot to Wolf, so he'll be at least third in the championship, probably lower, and maybe his chances will be over at the end of tonight.
Versus Randy. All right, so he went too far, he went too short. Can he actually make it just right this time? He's going to have a nose ahead, but he's going to be on the outside as they hit that braking zone. He goes deeper than Randy does, and he's going to just about drift out around the apex, but it's not as bad as it was before, and he's finally got it to work.
Well, that has been a long time coming, and you might say that the prolonging of that battle has prevented him from getting any further places that he might have otherwise got from the likes of Brian Stern or whatever, but he's finally got it done, and I think at this stage he'll just be pleased to be in 8th position and having got past Randy Lervold. It's been a good effort from Lervold to keep them behind him like that, but finally Haman's pace was enough.
We've also lost Peter Yerk, so he's our only DNF so far. I didn't see what the cause of it was, unfortunately, so afraid I can't report on that. Still have 23 cars on the track in the meantime, and this battle between Walsh and Main is not over yet. I know Jim was a little bit miffed about the contact based on the radio that I heard. He's going to show his nose. That's a long ways back though, and I didn't think that was going to be an actual attempt, although he does scare Main off the racing line a bit.
Yeah, just a little bit wide, but Main should hold firm, and that's a very nice exit out of the final corner now from him as well. Could be 4 laps still to go, by the way, for these guys, because Will Wolf is so far in front of them. He's over 30 seconds off the lead, but also nearly half a minute in front of the battle for 4th place, being led by John Cowbeck now.
That's a good point. Yeah, these two have definitely been able to put on some great pace here, even though they have been outrun by William Wolf, but I don't think they should feel too ashamed of that factor. By the way, since I did mention that contact, and Jim Walsh goes just a little bit wide, and car almost loses control next to him. That's Christopher Costas, who is a lap down. Thankfully, the two don't make contact, but race control did look at the contact between Walsh and Main, and no further action.
Yeah, so they'll be able to continue on freely, but looks like that mistake from Walsh might have put the battle to bed anyway. This battle is one that just won't go away at the moment. Cowbeck is now in traffic and trying to get past a couple of guys as Mike Sachs and Andrew Elsom chase him for 4th position. Would be a big result for any of these guys to get if they could. Cowbeck has only been inside the top 5 once this season, and that was at the previous round at Laguna Seca, so that'd be a nice little run he'd be getting together. And Mike Sachs so far this season has not been in the top 5, only in the top 10 once. And that was at Laguna, Watkins Glen, sorry, 2nd round of the championship. So he would very much like to be in the top 5 for the first time, and he is at the moment, but he's in the awkward position of going for Cowbeck, but also wanting to hold on from Andrew Elsom, who's behind him.
And both of them are up 10 from where they started in this race. Yeah, it's been a phenomenal result so far from both of them. As we watch from Elsom, I'm seeing quite a dry line starting to form, but it is way too late to try and take tires. They're going to have to try and find that moisture in these last few laps as the sun continues to soak up all the wetness that the skies had emptied onto the track just a few moments ago. This is a good run from Elsom. Look at how close he's getting to Sachs now.
Very, very close. He has a look down the inside, but can't go through there. And Sachs breaks a little bit later anyway. Showed a slightly defensive shape, and that will be encouraging to Elsom, because he'll know that he's just getting into the head of the driver in front of him, only a little bit, but he is just about getting into his head, so he'll be pleased about that. And if he can get Sachs away from Kalbeck, that would help just a little bit as well. Although Sachs will be able to put all his energy into defending, it will just uncomplicate things, if you like, for Elsom, who seems to be a little bit more confident in his ability at the moment.
This has been a pretty good recovery for Elsom, considering the problems he got into a little bit earlier in the race. Potentially a top 5 here, depending on if he can make that pass on Sachs. But even still, he's up 7 from where he started. If he didn't get involved in those problems, who knows where he would have wound up? Could he have been maybe battling with Walsh and Main for a podium?
Well, maybe. These are the what-ifs you've got to wonder about the end of this race. But I think the good thing about this race is that we're given experience to everybody in these types of races. As Kalbeck gets completely wrong-footed out of turn number 10 there, his run terrible onto the back straight, and Mike Sachs comes through to 4th position here, coming towards the penultimate lap.
Look what this has done for John. He's now got the slipstream instead. He's starting to come back on him, and as they come into the braking, he wasn't quite there. So it was unfortunately a mistake that was costly, as the position has been given up Mike into P4, and now he's got to deal with that pink 23 of Andrew Elsom getting very large in the mirrors.
Yeah, and now Sachs can maybe stop worrying about Elsom and Kalbeck, and hopefully their 2 fight will allow him to get away, but he goes a little bit deep in towards 1. Kalbeck with a nicer line out of there, gives him a more sweeping line through 2. Looks like these 3 are going to be glued together right to the finish here, but time is running out now.
Indeed, next time they get to the line, it's going to be white flag, because William Wolf is just coming around to there now to take that same flag. As they exit out of turn 5, this is one of the more difficult parts of the track. I'm sure even tougher in these wet conditions. In fact, I wouldn't call them fully wet either. It's moist conditions, probably constantly changing from lap to lap, trying to figure out how hard can you push it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of these conditions. I brought this battle interrupted me about a lap or 2 ago. Everybody will have just gained experience from this race. I actually think it's a great thing. You know, not many of these guys will have done hour-long races in a dry to wet to drying circuit again, because, you know, officials don't often have these kind of conditions. Obviously wet conditions, yes, but you know, over an hour-long race, for these fluctuations in different weather patterns to be a factor, I think a lot of guys will have learnt a lot here that they'll be able to take into future rounds, where maybe of this series where rain is going to be a feature, or indeed other series where rain is going to be a feature, because it's say not something done in officials all the time, and it is a lot to get your head around.
Yeah, that's a great point. And this league is always about trying to help drivers learn and grow in their skills, and that's why they have these 4 different classes available, 5 really, as we do have the entry class that we don't cover on the channel. As they get the white flag, look at the defense from Sachs. He's not feeling great about this run. He covers the inside down at turn 1. Callback is not going to be able to get in there, though.
Not quite this time. He's going to be putting the pressure on, though, all the way around the final lap, which the current race leader, Will Wolf, has just about completed.
Slapped all the way up to 13th place, essentially. Lee Binkley looking like he's going to be the last one to be able to complete every lap of this race. William Wolf needed to respond, and respond he did, taking a victory once again, his 3rd of Series 14.
And it closes the championship margin, by the way, from Jefferson from 80 points down to just 30. That's the gap between 1st and 2nd in a race at the end of the day. That is close. Jefferson loses his safety net as well. He looks like he's going to finish in 16th.
So he'll still get some points, but it's not going to be great after this. He's going to have to hope that William Wolf also has us a few more problems throughout the race. Jeremy Main finally coming around now. We're looking at a gap of nearly 40 seconds to P2. Wolf absolutely dominated this one. Walsh behind him with what might be his first podium in PCA. I'll have to check and see if that's the case. But this one's not over. Still battling for 4th. Mike Sachs covering down to the inside ahead of Callbeck. And as they come into the turn, also a big dive from Elsom trying to get involved. They all scrunch up into the final corner, and Elsom is underneath John, but he's not able to make it work. John actually goes quite wide there. Mike Sachs will get fourth. Callback will barely get fifth, and Elsom gets sixth place. Oh, Callback with a black flag, though.
What would that have been for? That's very odd. I did wonder as he ran wide there, is he going to get a slowdown that he won't be able to serve because the finish line will be right there? If that is the case, then he will get a post-race penalty of some description that will drop him quite a long way down. So it looked to me like it was one of those things. It was, he thought, well, last corner of the race doesn't really matter if I go and do this, but it absolutely does if you get a slowdown that you end up not serving by the line.
I believe you're right that is the case, and it is applied immediately. He falls down to 13th after that one. So Jim Walsh will wind up with third as Mike Sachs was fourth. Here is our results. William Wolf, your winner. Jeremy Main in second and Jim Walsh in third. Mike Sachs P4. Elsom gets promoted to fifth because of that late penalty. Brian Stern into P6. Kevin Haman in seventh. From there, Randy Lervold was eighth. Daniel Corbett ninth. Nick Francis able to recover to a top 10, but it was not the day he was looking for. Lee Binkley was 11th. Alan Hales 12th. John Callbeck, unfortunately, all the way down to 13th with the time penalty. Zahara took the first one a lap down with the unusual call, but still, I believe, a net gain for him. Chris Costas 15th. Josh Jefferson only 16th today. I'd have to check to see what points that would score him. Tim Thornton was 17th, Donald Manning 18th, and Ron Evans 19th, with Kent Locklear in the 20th position. And then 21st was Casey McDonald Cavanaugh, 2 laps down, and 22nd Robinson in 23rd, and Yurtsa are only DNF today. Let's chat with Will Wolf to see how he felt about this race, because it looked like, other than a bit of a mistake early, he had it under control. Let's start at the beginning here, William. You lost the lead early. You had a little bit of a half spin. Did it just maybe take a bit to kind of get into the groove once again?
Yeah, I got to watch the replay. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but just some door banging, I think.
Was there contact involved? Because we hadn't caught that.
If it didn't show contact, it must have been netcode. Not sure.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll have to go and look at that a little bit later. I mean, other than that, at the start, things kind of wound up your way in a very emphatic fashion. A 39-second lead is certainly not going to do your ego no harm.
Yeah, it was a fun race, but Josh is fast, so we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. And we have talked about his consistency as well, which didn't seem to come to save him here today. Do you think you have what it takes to kind of keep up the good results, to keep him at bay for the remaining rounds?
We'll see. I like the next 2 tracks. They're fun. I think I got the pace, so we'll try to make it happen.
All right. I like the fact that you enjoy the tracks. Hopefully that plays to your favor. And again, congratulations on an impressive win.
Thanks very much, and thanks to our sponsor, Princess Cruises, and Nikki Chan in Last 10.
That was William Wolf here finishing with the win. And man, a few words today, but he doesn't need to say much. I think the driving did most of it. While Jeremy Main came home in second behind him, and I believe Ewan has caught up with him.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll bring him in. I'll try not to move myself. Jeremy, welcome in. Good to have you with us. Congrats on the first podium of season 14 in the PCA Sport Class this season. Tell us how difficult these conditions were. First, to read while you were driving, and second of all, to sort of actually drive once the rain actually started to fall.
Yeah, it was pretty tricky, especially starting the race in the dry. Really, most of the practice runs that we had been doing, we were starting in the wet, so it kind of made more sense, but I knew we were going to have to make a change to wets. So, it was definitely a challenge. And then as toward the end, the track was really drying out.
Where does this put you in this season, as far as you are pleased with how it's been going. At the start of the day, you were 6th in the championship. You'll probably move up at least a place, maybe a couple at the end. How pleased are you with the way that season 14 has gone for you so far?
You know, I'm really thrilled. I've had some difficulties, kind of, especially like getting my fueling worked out, and so I felt like I've been able to run with some of the faster drivers. Not Will Wolf so much, but some of the other faster drivers. But you've got to hang in there correctly for the whole race to get to get a podium. So I'm just thrilled to have this evening.
Yeah, congratulations on a podium to add to all the other top 10s you've had in the races you've been at this season, and thanks for coming to chat to us at the end.
Yeah, thank you guys for everything.
Thanks very much, Jeremy Main. First podium of the season, a 100% record, by the way, as far as top 10s go in races he's been at. And now, Joe, the final driver on the podium, Jim Walsh, joined us.
Indeed, Jim, I've talked to you a lot of times, but I don't believe I've talked to you on the podium in PCA. Is this your first time here in the virtual series?
It is. I'm excited to be here.
Well, you had a heck of a battle there with Jeremy Main for those podium positions. With you guys kind of all on your lonesome and no one anywhere nearby, did it feel like you were very free to fight as hard as you want?
It was. I was pushing. I had Christopher Costas right behind me. He was a lap down, but very similar pace to me. And I need to thank him for letting me and Jeremy race and not trying to get behind me or stick his nose. So I was watching in my rearview mirror a little bit because he was, within a second for last 10 laps or so. And I was working hard to try and chase down Jeremy, but also trying to stay on track with tires that were going away. So it was fun.
And you can also give some perspective that not many in this group could maybe offer. How did this feel driving in the wet in the sim compared to what you've done in the real Porsche?
It actually felt a little bit easier. These rain tires are really good. The amount of throttle I was able to use out of the corners and how quickly I could hit full throttle definitely doesn't seem to be as realistic. It wasn't that wet in today's race, but in practice sessions where it was wet, I think it was definitely easier in the sim than in real life. I thought that the dries, as it started to rain, were pretty good. I was worried that they might just all of a sudden just get super nasty before the track really got too wet, and I think that's how I moved up a few positions as I stayed out 1 or 2 laps later, because I've done that in real life, haven't done that in iRacing, but as it started to rain, stay out on dries and was able to keep some quick laps in that until I was starting to move around and figure, okay, it's time to come in.
It certainly looked like the right call. Well, congratulations on the first podium, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you more here on PCA.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Joe.
Jim Walsh finishing P3. And for those that didn't know, I've gotten to interview Jim on the podium in the Porsche Sprint Challenge in the real world racing. So that's where Jim and I know each other from in terms of motorsports. But we're going to wrap things up here with a quick mention for the next round, which is going to be Zolder, as we've heard a few drivers talk about. That'll be on November 19th at 9 p.m. Eastern. But we've got one more rain race to go. Join us tomorrow night, November 6th, for the challenge class here at Aragon. Big thanks goes to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as to our team, Hugo and Ewan. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Joe Peak. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.